Hello, and welcome to Unexplained Possibilities, Too Crazy to Believe. Here, I'm going to tell you a story or stories that may or may not be too crazy to believe, and in fact, you might be right in thinking so. One, or maybe even all the stories might be a work of fiction, or they could all be real. It's up to you to decide for yourself what's real and what's too crazy to believe. So with that said, let's get into it. On November 5th, 1975, in northeastern Arizona, a work team consisting of 7 individuals reported coming into contact with a reflective, luminous object that was in the shape of a disc hovering close to their truck on a remote dirt road in the forest. According to the crew, one of their members, James Thorton, leaves out of the truck and walks up to the object. This would turn out to be a very bad idea, as James was struck by a bright bluish light and hurled to the ground dozens of feet away. Scared from what they just witnessed, the other crew members drive off away from the object, leaving James behind. The driver of the truck is Ken Washington, the crew foreman and a personal friend of James. While fleeing the area, Washington says that he looked back and saw a luminous object lift out of the forest and speed rapidly toward the horizon. He, along with the other 5 witnesses, would eventually take a lie detector test regarding the event that just transpired. They would all pass said test. A short period of time passed and the crew went back to find James. However, to their shock, they found nothing. There was no trace of the UFO or James Thornton. After some debate, the men decided to call police and ask for assistance. The group was first met by Deputy Edwards and then by Sheriff Pullman, who would go on to say that the crewmen were apparently sincerely distressed. The officers and the crewmen went back up the hill and searched again with flashlights, although they eventually called off the search and made plans for a more thorough manhunt the next morning. The next few days were marked by unsuccessful searches for the missing Thornton. Temperatures dropped below zero the first 2 nights of the search, dimming hope that Thornton was still alive. Surprisingly though, James turns up 5 days later, confused and distraught, but with memories of alien and exotic human entities. James claims that he escaped from 3 aliens examining him and ran around the ship before he found himself in a room with a single chair in it. James sits in the chair and the room is suddenly filled with lights, very much like a planetarium. Shortly after that, James saw what to him appeared to be a human come in and escort him around the ship. Eventually, the human alien brought James to a medical room of some sort, and James blacks out. James, like his co-workers, took several lie detector tests. Curiously though, the first lie detector test James took, he failed. He says this was due to a hostile test giver. All subsequent tests after that, James Thornton passed. When questioned about his sudden return, James said that he regained consciousness lying on his stomach. When he came to, he looked up just in time to see a light turn off on the bottom of the curved silvery disc hovering feet above the road. It floated silently above the road a dozen yards away. He could see the night sky, the surrounding trees, and the highway center line reflected in the curving mirror of its hull. He noticed a faint warmth radiating onto his face. Then suddenly, the UFO shoots up vertically into the sky, and it was gone almost immediately from sight. One of the most interesting things about the UFO leaving was how quick and how silent it was, James would think to himself. Thornton would later make his way into a town that was surprisingly empty. No one was around to help him. Fortunately for James, he finds a payphone and uses it to call his brother. Help had finally arrived, and after a few days' recovery, James shares his experiences to his co-workers as well as the police. So what do you think? Is this a tale of not only a close encounter, but also an abduction that leads on a tour of a ship? Or is this merely a story created from an overactive imagination that's just too crazy to believe? Find out the answer next week.